For centuries, the Rothschilds stood as the towering giants of global finance, the undisputed monarchs of European banking and the most visible symbol of Jewish achievement on an international scale. Their name traveled across capitals, treaties, and empires. But in the shadow of that enormous legacy, another family quietly rose, a family just as ambitious, just as brilliant, but far more discreet. The Warburgs. For more than 400 years, they had been building a banking dynasty of their own, one that began in the bustling markets of Venice and slowly extended its roots across Germany, Britain, and the United States. Yet despite their influence, their story remained strangely invisible, tucked behind the glare that the Rothschilds had attracted. Few people today have ever heard of them, and yet they challenged the Rothschilds' dominance and reshaped international finance in ways that still influence the world today. The Warburg saga truly begins in the early 1900s, an era buzzing with tension beneath the polished surface of diplomacy. Europe was a cauldron on the verge of boiling over. Nations were racing to industrialize, rivalries were sharpening, and deep inside the world of banks and capital flows, another contest was unfolding. One that didn't involve armies or fleets, but influence, control, and the ability to steer entire economies. At the center of this great financial rivalry stood two dynasties: the Rothschilds, the old guard embedded in London and Paris, and the Warburgs, the rising challengers with one foot in Hamburg and another in New York. Germany and the United States were emerging as new industrial titans, eager to break Britain's financial grip. And inevitably, these families became symbols of their nation's ambitions. To understand the magnitude of the moment, one must remember just how powerful Britain was. At the dawn of the 20th century, Britain controlled nearly a quarter of the world's trade. Through the City of London, it dominated global credit. British banks set terms for international insurance, shipping, and capital. A simple freeze on loans could punish a foreign government. A sudden pressure on a currency could reward an ally or destabilize a rival. Finance became an extension of British foreign policy, a tool as effective as any fleet. But the world was shifting beneath their feet. When the financial panic of 1907 erupted, it exposed deep vulnerabilities across global markets. It was a harsh reminder to Germany and the United States that as long as London controlled international capital, they would remain strategically dependent. Both nations scrambled to fortify their financial systems. Both turned to the Warburgs. Max Warburg advised the German Empire from Hamburg, leading Warburg and Company, one of the most prestigious banks in the country. His influence reached straight into the Kaiser's court. Paul Warburg, his younger brother, had crossed the Atlantic and become a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company, the same firm led by his brother-in-law Jacob Schiff. Paul was disgusted by the chaos of American finance. No central bank, no unified system, and no mechanisms to prevent nationwide panics. He believed the United States could never become a true financial power unless it modernized its monetary structure. So he launched a relentless crusade. He wrote articles, lectured lawmakers, and lobbied elite bankers, pushing one central idea. America needed a central bank, a disciplined institution capable of stabilizing currency and controlling credit. Paul's belief was not merely economic, it was strategic. He envisioned an America strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with Britain, capable of resisting sudden gold outflows or global shocks. In 1910, he attended the now famous secret meeting at Jekyll Island, where he quietly helped write the blueprint that would become the Federal Reserve. It took 3 more years of political warfare, suspicion, and furious public debate, but by 1913 the Federal Reserve Act passed, and Paul Warburg's fingerprint was permanently embedded in the foundation of American finance. Meanwhile, Max Warburg worked from Germany with a different strategic lens. He believed Germany needed to shield itself from British dominance, and his approach often involved strengthening industrial and economic ties with the United States, a financial alliance that he hoped could counterbalance British influence. For a brief moment, The Warburg brothers were perfectly aligned, working from opposite sides of the Atlantic to build systems that would challenge the old order represented by the Rothschilds and the power of the City of London. But history rarely allows harmony to last. As Europe marched toward war, the Warburg brothers found themselves trapped between national loyalties and global ambitions. Max continued advising the German Empire, moving through the corridors of imperial power. Paul, despite facing suspicion for his German roots, was appointed by President Woodrow Wilson to serve on the very first Federal Reserve Board. Less than a week after World War I began, Paul was sworn into office. It was a surreal split, one brother serving German strategic interests, the other helping shape American financial policy, each working for governments that were about to become enemies. The situation soon turned impossible. Germany's desperation on the battlefield pushed its military leadership toward reckless decisions, especially the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. Max and even the German Chancellor himself warned that attacking American ships would drag the United States into the conflict, but the military ignored them. Across the ocean, Paul was trapped. He had defended German intentions for as long as he could, hoping economic ties might prevent war, but with American ships sinking and American citizens dying, the pressure became overwhelming. The U.S. entered the war in 1917, and with that, the brothers' long campaign for transatlantic cooperation collapsed. Yet the Warburgs were not finished. After the war, Paul stepped down from the Federal Reserve but continued shaping American financial policy from the background. He helped channel American capital into European reconstruction, especially into Germany, through institutions like the International Acceptance Bank. Max, meanwhile, faced a nation spiraling into economic ruin. Hyperinflation devoured savings, businesses collapsed, and the German mark became nearly worthless. It was Max's bank that helped introduce circulation of foreign currencies within Germany, a temporary but crucial lifeline that helped prevent absolute economic collapse. Ideas like this eventually helped inspire later global markets such as the Eurobond system decades later. But as Germany struggled, political extremism grew. The Warburgs, once pillars of German finance, became convenient targets. They were Jewish, wealthy, influential, and symbolized an old order despised by rising nationalists. At the same time, they clashed with another force, the Zionist movement. Unlike the Rothschilds, the Warburgs opposed the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. They believed Jews should integrate fully into Western nations rather than retreat to a separate homeland. Their stance infuriated Zionist leaders, but to the Warburgs, it was a matter of principle. They funded agricultural colonies in Russia and Ukraine instead of supporting migration to Palestine. It was yet another example of the family standing apart from every conventional expectation, even within their own community. The rise of the Nazis crushed any remaining hope they had for peaceful integration. Despite their loyalty to Germany, their service to its economy, and their contributions to rebuilding the nation, they were still Jewish, and that alone made them targets. Their Hamburg bank was slowly Aryanized, stripped piece by piece, until much of its work involved helping Jewish families escape. Max held on far longer than he should have, insisting that he was still German, still loyal, still safe. But by 1938, he finally fled to New York, just months before Europe plunged into war once again. When the dust settled after World War II, the Warburg family emerged remarkably intact. Even as the Nazis tried to erase them, they survived by quietly moving assets, relocating key family members, and preparing for the worst long before the storm fully broke. In a symbolically powerful moment, Paul's nephew, Erich Warburg, returned to Germany not as a banker, but as a U.S. Air Force officer. He interrogated Hermann Göring himself and worked to restore what remained of the family's Hamburg bank. Within a few short years, the Warburg name was again central to European financial training and corporate leadership. By the time Paul Warburg died, His wealth was substantial, but his true legacy was far greater than money. He had helped create the Federal Reserve, reshaped American finance, supported European reconstruction, and guided his family through 2 world wars. Max had rebuilt Germany's financial foundation twice, survived persecution, and watched his family rise from the ashes of devastation. Unlike many old banking dynasties that vanished after the wars, the Warburgs did something astonishing. They regained their place in their homeland. Today, the Warburg legacy remains immense but intentionally quiet. In Germany, Warburg continues as a tightly held private banking group in Hamburg. In the United States, Warburg Pincus stands as one of the world's most powerful private equity firms. Their influence stretches across continents, markets, and industries. Yet they avoid publicity, foundations bearing their name, or flashy displays of wealth. Like the Swedish Wallenbergs, they lead from behind the curtain. Their story is a reminder of an old truth about power: the greatest influence is rarely loud. It is quiet, disciplined, deliberate. After surviving wars, persecution, ideological battles, and the collapse of nations, the Warburgs chose invisibility. And in doing so, they became essential, quietly embedded in the machinery that drives global finance. If you've listened this far, drop a light bulb emoji in the comments so I know you reached the end of this unbelievable story. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.